Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have Dave Strider running for U.S. Senate with us, and he took his time out to come talk to us today and let us know a bit about him. Hi, Dave.
Hi, how you doing, Rhonda?
Fabulous. How are you doing today?
Very well. The sun's out. I'm above the ground. Can't ask for anything better. I mean, any day like that is a good day for anyone alive.
Isn't that true? It's always nice to wake up and breathing.
I know. I know.
Oh, so just to get us kicked off, what got you to run for U.S. Senate?
Well, I was thinking about it 2015 while I was in California visiting relatives. And I realized that really hadn't anything changed in decades. In fact, it had gotten worse, in my opinion. Then I came back 2016, still thinking about it. Then we had the fiasco with superdelegates. We had the fiasco with the just the election in general. And when I realized that our superdelegates here voted against Bernie Sanders, against the will of our caucus system, I knew I had to do something. And so I thought, oh, it'll be 40 years when the election comes up. So, yeah.
Did you go through the caucus process yourself to see how that ran?
Yes, I'm running as an independent, but I was elected as a PCO in the 27th Legislative District.
Oh, nice. So are you still down as the PCO in that district?
No, I resigned from that position because I've seen what has happened with Sarah Smith and other progressives running for congressional seats against incumbents who have failed to listen to us. And realizing what they went through, I kind of foresaw that there was going to be an issue trying to get that voter base. And I just knew that right then and there, something had to be done. And so I knew as an independent, I could go against the incumbent and have it stand a better chance.
Right. Brian just joined us a few minutes ago. We're going to let Brian, are you ready? Do you want to ask a question or two of Dave? You're on mute.
Yeah.
Good morning, Brian.
I got you. There you are.
Okay. All right. Good morning. Sorry, I was a little late. I was talking with the wife. You know how that she was on her break at work. So it's good to get you in here, David. I was able to take a look at your website and all that, and it's looking pretty good. I might want to talk to you after this, try and give you some pointers on your website if you don't mind.
I'd like that. And so would my webmaster.
What's that?
My webmaster would too, sir. I mean, it's
awesome.
We're always open for suggestions.
Right. Okay. There's a few questions though. One is, I didn't see anything about any LNG or any fight you have in that. So what will you do for the Puyallup tribe in the battle that they are waging against the unpermitted building of the largest LNG facility in Washington?
Well, before I ran for senator here in Washington, I divested myself from a company and research thing that I had put together myself in renewable fuels. And on that, carbon emissions, I mean, airplanes can fly on electric power, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And so I've been very adamant about that green technology. In 1992, 91, 92, when I was running for an office back in Ohio for mayor, one of the things that I ran on was clean water. And I ran on that because of the aquifers that the town village sat on top of. And we had a junkyard, a salvage yard that was sitting right on top of the aquifer too. And so I felt it was a need to step up to the plate on the aquifers. The Puyallup tribe, anytime that, this is how I feel about our Native people and the treaties that have been made by our Congress throughout the history of this nation. And that is, if Congress makes a treaty, it becomes law. And because it becomes law, we are upheld. We have to uphold that law as a nation. And I took an oath to do that. And we have had First People's rights stolen from them, taken from them. World War II, we relied heavily on the wind talkers, but what people don't realize is the segregation and everything that went before that. And so anything that goes against tribal authority or the sovereign nation of these different tribes, as the Lakota in Standing Rock, I consider that an act of war by the state and the corporations that are waging it. It wouldn't bother me to have the United Nations step in, because our government has seemed to have failed in that respect of upholding rights of the people living within our borders. So I look at it as an act of war. I'm not a war hawk, by the way.
Yeah, that was going to kind of lead me into, so where is your stance on our interventionist wars? Currently, we have, 7, maybe 8 countries that we're bombing. What is your way that we can maybe get out of that situation? What would you want to do there?
These are wars and issues that doesn't require our intervention in someone's freedom. If anything, we should be bombing Saudi Arabia because of the human rights violations that they've done. I mean, look what we did for Saddam Hussein. We invaded his country and overthrew his government. The same with Gaddafi. We did the same thing. We did regime changes. We did that in Vietnam.
I personally would advocate for democracy to prevail over bombs, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a travesty to our republic. And the 186 bases we have worldwide and the thousands of troops that we now have stationed in Africa need to come home. The only U.S. troops that need to be abroad are those that are on deployment, naval operations, or part of NATO, SATO, or whatever the agreement that we are in treaty. That's the only time that they should be overseas. And Marines, we are delegated to protect the embassies and diplomats there in foreign nations. And I think that that's the only limit that we should have as far as military presence in other countries.
Great. So there's one more. It says on your website, you will fight for kitchen table economics. Could you briefly explain what that means and let us know how that will affect your policy?
Today's economic programs, the way we do business as a nation, most people understand what it's like to run a budget, but we are a sovereign nation. And because we are a sovereign nation, we have what they call a fiat money system. We have our gross national product, which is in the multi-trillions of dollars. Our nation could do a yearly bill for financing anything and everything Congress puts together throughout the year as it comes up, such as emergency, Puerto Rico, Houston, those kind of things, volcanoes, the fires. No problem getting the money, because we could, as I'm proposing right now, a $14+ trillion bill my first year on the Senate. And that's going to include $4 trillion for our water. No business should have control of it. That is a strategic asset, and it needs to be in the control of the people and the government. So
Dave, sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
I can get going, so you'll have to cut me off like that if you would.
Okay, so since you mentioned fiat currency and the bill that you'd be proposing when you go into office, because of fiat currency, we can do all that. But are you proposing we print more money, so as to say, to fund your infrastructure bill? Or are you suggesting, would you also consider gutting the military budget a little bit and reining in the surveillance state? Because both have different consequences. I'd love to know your answer.
Oh, yes, they do. They do have different consequences. I just like to start that to respond to your question is that our our taxes that we pay do not fund the federal spending, period. we've been lied to. We went off the gold standard with Nixon. We went off the gold standard, and we are not obligated to that gold standard. If people want to do business with us, they do it in dollars. Our national infrastructure, anything that we use for public use and the betterment of our public, the citizens of this nation, i.e. education for all. We can fund that just as the European countries are. I'm getting ready to go to Thailand in March because my family issue, my father-in-law is weak, and I don't know if I'll get to see him. So I'll be in Thailand. They've had single payer since 2002. The ratio of money exchange is 30 to 1 plus 30 plus 1 to 1. And they have single payer. My father-in-law was in a coma for over a year. He was on life support and everything else, and it did not cost one dime, not one dime. Okay. But if you or I go to the emergency room, we can expect a $1,000 bill. We can fund public works with no debt to the national debt. Anything that is done for the public, i.e. education, single payer, and single payer is as easy as your social security number. I've said this since I started campaigning. We all have a social security card. We can't buy a house. We can't get a license. We can't do nothing without that social security card. And some of you folks that are younger, born in 1980 and after, had one issued to you pretty much at birth. And so you're already in the Medicare system. We don't have to put it single payer. We don't have to say the ACA. We don't have to do anything. Medicare already has a base. We're already in it from birth on. All we have to do is make it so that we go to the doctor, present your ID with your social security card, and boom, you're in. You're seeing everything seeing your doctors, you're getting your prescriptions, having tests run with no copays. The money that will be generated by 300 plus million Americans going into the healthcare system, we're talking about jobs. We're talking about everything that's going to happen. We're going to push out the insurance companies, period. We're not going to see rates every time. We're not going to see pre-existing conditions. So you can see what the public funding, the debt that we won't have as a nation. And this debt that we have now, it's all fabricated. We can talk about that some other time. But that's basically what I'd be doing with part of that 14 trillion. And I said plus, remember I said 14 plus trillion. So it could go higher as people and I talk, and more other Congress representatives and senators as we talk. It may go up higher.
Would you also propose, sorry, Brian, just because it's just following up on that, would you also propose redefining our tax code to get some of that, to fund some of that? And of course, some of that, because we have fiat currency, some of that we can just pay for, just literally print the money. That's how it works. But do you think, would you be on board with redefining our tax code and making it more progressive?
Oh, yes. In fact, this is where I stand on taxes. You want to end Citizens United. This is a very good way to do it. We go back to the Eisenhower tax plan, where people over a certain amount of money were charged 90%. Now, what happened with that tax rate for the 1% during Eisenhower years? Our workforce, middle class grew, unions thrived. We got everything that we were needing as a nation to grow economically. We had one man or one woman going to work and providing for the entire nation, their family. They were able to buy a home, buy a car, go to school. Joe Biden made the comment the other day, it only cost me $234 to get my degree. Well, times were different then, Joe. Times were different. I know when $20 used to go a whole bunch of ways as far as feeding your family. I remember 5 loaves of bread for $1, and that was all the time. Sometimes it would go to 6 or 7, depending on how fresh it was or how stale it was getting. So we have lost a lot of that, and we owe that all to our Congress. We owe it because they have ignored our fiat money system, period.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
add to that discussion. So you mentioned us young bucks, and then you also mentioned about the fiat currency and the dollar. I would like to know what your feelings are on Bitcoin and where you see that tying into all of this.
Bitcoin and all the cryptocurrencies at this point in time are nothing more than investments or speculations on the stock market. They do not have any financial backing. In fact, it's probably, if you look at it a little bit more closely, it's probably the closest thing you're going to get to a legal or shadow Ponzi scheme. You get in it with your own risk. You take risks of doing that.
Right. Some would argue that the blockchain is more reliable, say, than actual government currencies, and is a way to actually make these sort of societies with Green New Deal and the kind of societies we need to generate equality or equity, excuse me, not just equality, right? And that could be an avenue to be able to pursue that. What do you have any consideration on? Do you just think it's a Ponzi scheme?
Well, I'll put it to you this way. Once we get that new Congress, that new Senate, we won't need to have to worry about people wanting to invest in Bitcoin or any other kind of cryptocurrency or blockchains, because we're going to have a federal jobs guarantee. That means you're going to be able to go any place in the country, just the same way with your healthcare, the same way with you don't have to worry about things. We're going to do what FDR did in the 30s. We're going to do that. We're going to have a massive infrastructure bill. We're going to put people to work. We're going to educate them. We're going to make our schools, our K through 12, we're going to make those the best in the world. I mean, I remember when I saw a lot of exchange students, and now I see exchange students coming and they're like disappointed. They're really disappointed. I mean, you have to get a fired up professor in order to get a good education. And I remember one of my first classes in political science, the professor says, what is power? He posed a question to us the very first day. What is power? Having just gotten out of the Marine Corps, I was thinking militarily. But what is power? The power is your voice and your actions. That is power, and no one can stop it.
So speaking of power and voices, this last weekend, we had the Women's March going on all across, the country. What do you think the most powerful voices coming out of that were? What messaging did you find that touched you the most out of that?
I like the one about my body, my choice. I really like that one. I have 3 daughters and 3 times as many granddaughters. And I have 1 son and 2 grandsons. Three. Yeah, I mean, about that many. I have so many kids. I mean, it's kind of relaxing to be out here in Washington State. I don't have all these kids all the time tearing up stuff, but I did that too. But I think the most important thing that came out of the Women's March, is the fact that they amassed in numbers across the nation. They amassed. Now, there were, like other marches that we've had, trolls going out there and trying to incite their own platform instead of thinking about what the woman movement is about. And it's more than just, your health. It's about your pay, your equality. I mean, when my first daughter was born, she was born January 1st, 1976 at Marine Corps Base, Camp Lejeune, which was also in the county and state of North Carolina. She was the bicentennial baby for the United States Marine Corps at Camp Lejeune. And she was also the bicentennial baby for Jacksonville, North Carolina. So mom and dad really raked in a lot of supplies that they were going to need, the first couple of years. But when I went back to work, the senior judge asked me, he said, well, Sergeant, he said, what do we have? And I said, a president. And I had a box of cigars. They were Dutch Master presidents. And I said, a cigar. I handed in the cigar and I said, a president, sir. he says, no, no, no. He says, Sergeant, boy or girl? And I said, she's going to be a president, sir. And that was 1976. And
nice.
I said that right to my the senior judge in the Piedmont Judicial Circuit where I was stationed. And I believe strongly about my daughter's accomplishments and what they're doing. I have two daughters working in healthcare. One in the healthcare is directly working with veterans. And so I'm very proud of my children. My son is a better man than I am. And I believe that his sons will be better than he is. And that's what we hope as parents. But women are so underrated. I mean, without a woman, I wouldn't be sitting here. Most of us wouldn't. So, I mean, I think that, women have been given a bad rub their whole life. When it was queens that ruled the world, it was queens who sent ships into what they called the New World. Which started the genocide of first people and the destruction of the continents more. I mean, but they didn't do that. Those guys who were out there, the Pizarros and the Cortezes and all them other people, they were after gold, and they knew that they could find favor with the queen if they said person gold too, and the queen would let them do what they wanted because they were so many miles away. So I mean, there's a lot of different things.
Also, yeah, I believe that women taking over power. Positions in the imperialist system is not feminist. So it's not a woman ICE member is not feminist. Like there's feminist ideology is specific. It is anti-war. It is not xenophobic. It is socialist, and you can't just pick and choose. One question before we move on. Brian has a question about public childcare. Since you mentioned your daughters. The public childcare was the first demand of the American suffragette movement, the first wave feminist that took the streets. Their first demands was public childcare because they believed that as long as women are tied in the chains of domestic work, because women are the ones that give birth. So and women are paid less even to this day. So even today, most of the families choose for the woman to stay at home. The two things that I think would be huge in leveling the playing field is public childcare and pay equity. Where do you stand on both of these?
I guess the best way to explain where I stand, and that is, if I have a right and you don't, that is not good. Your rights should be the same as my rights. Now, some of the rights that you have will probably require other things, other layers, but your rights to choose, your rights to move, your rights to advance, your rights to have the knowledge and be able to do what you want to do without the repercussions of some guy telling you, you really think you ought to do that? I don't think so. You've really lost a chance to grow in this company. Those things have got to stop. I was raised by a single woman, and I was always taught respect. Respect your elders, respect a woman. Get the door for her. I still get the door for my wife. Open the doors, where we go into, get her car, shut the door, open and shut it for her. Respect. That's where it begins. And men who are ruling right now, they don't have that. They don't have that respect that I grew up with. So if you have a right that I don't have, well, I think I got a lot of rights, but you don't have all the rights that I have. You cannot control what decisions go with your body. And I think that, that needs to change. So my rights should be the same as your rights, and your rights should be the same as mine. Equality. That's how I look at it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Equality. The same for you, the same for me. And
Thank you.
Means, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Can I get a yes or no answer on the public childcare and pay equity, please? Would you support pay equity for women in Senate?
Equity program.
Equity. I mean, passing a law that says
pay equity. Absolutely.
Yeah.
If my daughters are working for some company.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And how about public childcare? Norway has Norway, Sweden, France, Italy. A lot of European countries provide public childcare. So and quality ones too, so that both parents, if they choose to, obviously, if they choose to work, their child is guaranteed good development. without too much strain on them economically. So where do you stand on public childcare? If there was a bill to be introduced, would you vote yes?
You could write it into our full job program, okay, and make it part of that job program.
Yep.
Okay, and or you could, because it involves health and the children's health well-being, I would like to have a registered nurse or somebody or some technicians on staff wherever my child was being, had that while I was away. So I call it two different things as far as financing goes, and there's no reason why it shouldn't happen.
Okay,
that's part of public works. So there is no debt to the nation.
Yeah. Yes, that's what I was concerned about. Thank you for your answer.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dave. So we do have a question coming from our live feed on YouTube. They would like to know where you stand on getting big corporate cash out of our political system and publicly funded elections. Can you go into how you feel about that? And then also I would like to know if you've heard of and researched the American Anti-Corruption Act and all of that. Belongs, in that it all kind of coalesces.
Okay. Yes, I've heard about the American Corruption Act, and we'll get to that in a second. How do you get money out of politics? Well, first of all, the Supreme Court gave us all the ammunition we need. Now that corporations are people can be sued. We could be sued anytime this month, but people can be sued. And they'll say, well, who's the person in the corporation? Well, you got the board of directors and the major investors. That is the body of people that will be subpoenaed, charged, and brought to court. Plain and simple. And if we find out that there has been foreign, because a lot of companies have foreign investments, there could be, some really stiff ramifications. But corporations are people. Thank you, Supreme Court, for that decision. We now have a pathway to get rid of Citizens United. We take enough of those people to court, and with a strong Congress and Senate, we'll be able to move to make that change. But we start suing those people. We start taking their assets because they've taken ours. They've hurt us so many times. So we start by seizing their assets. I mean, freezing a federal freeze on their assets, their bank accounts, offshore, onshore, wherever. No can sell your house. No can get your car. In fact, we're going to seize it like they do in drug bust across the nation. And then you're getting it back. You're just going to have to wait until we go through all the paperwork. That's how I feel about Citizens United.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, that really pushed it over the edge, taking our voices.
Well, they've pushed us over the edge, and it's time to let them know. I'm not pulling any punches. I'm going for the jugular, plain and simple. They've been killing people, citizens. They've lied to us. They've deprived us. I'm going for the jugular.
If you're going for the jugular, have you heard of Article the First?
Articles of the First. Would you repeat that so everyone can know what you're talking about?
So Article the First is the original the original Bill of Rights that included First Amendment. Excuse me. Thank you, Courtney. And included caps on representative government and being able to cap out. Currently, we would have one representative for every 50,000 people. Right now in Congress, we have one representative for approximately 720,000 people. Now, it is in the court process, and it is a viable option. Have you heard of it at all, and would you care to talk about it?
Yes. One of your esteemed associates, Tyler Vega, sent me a link just on that. I read it.
Must have got the same link I did.
Gerrymandering. It's about gerrymandering. And I think that we do need to do something about that. Oh my gosh, can you imagine 5,000 people in the Congress? We might get something done. Think about the supermajority that they would need. But anyway, we need to change it. We have let politicians, local board of elections, primarily, do that. And I'm telling you right now, the Board of Elections, I don't see where a party should be able to dictate to a Board of Elections when there's going to be a primary, who can be in the primary, who can run for this office, who's going to be given the information that they need to contact the different constituents throughout their district. No more. It has to be a bipartisan thing. No political affiliation whatsoever. And anytime that you lean toward a political affiliation, then, an investigation on you, who did that leaning, and the people who were part of that leaning should be investigated, plain and simple. We need to it starts at our local Board of Elections, plain and simple. Term limits start at our local Board of Elections. Many states have passed term limits. And so why aren't we enforcing it? Because the local Board of Elections aren't, plain and simple. And it all starts with our Board of Elections. Now, the lawsuit that is going to be heard that you refer to, Brian, that is going to take some lengthy time, but we can start doing it immediately with grassroots people like we had in this 2017 election, 2018, and all these off-year elections. We can start putting progressives into office that will also make sure that the public is served, that your vote does actually count.
Yeah, to get back, before we go off any further, to get back to the previous question, you weren't able to speak about the publicly funded elections. So instead of, having these corporations and being able to pour all this money in, if we turn our election to a publicly funded system, that could eliminate a lot of that. How would you go about that? Would you vote on something like that? How would you vote? Would you look at maybe help drafting bills to that premises for publicly funded elections?
Well, on that, Rhonda, remember the little box that you used to click, would you like $1? Well, when I first started voting, it was $1. Would you like $1 to go to the presidential election? And then it jumped to $2, and now it's $3, I believe. I think that just a flat $5, because it doesn't come out of your tax return, it doesn't come out of mine, but it's the amount of money that our fiat system donates to the public good. And that would be the only money based on your location. This campaign right now is being funded entirely by small donations. I've had to return donations. And if you're running for office and you get so many people or signatures or whatever, you should be entitled to some form of campaign money. But it all comes out of that one national April 15th deadline tax return. Do you want to? Boom. And the federal government, based on politician, the population, let me get that straight. The IRS could base on and everything the population of the U.S. And that would be the amount of money, $5 per person, the amount of money available for nationwide elections. I think we can start doing that. We don't have to. It's already written into the code. We just have to increase the amount and make it available in our budget that this is for elections, and go from there. We don't need to create new laws. We just need to amend those that are there already.
Thank you. Courtney, did you have any questions? Yeah, we've got Courtney. Thank you very much. Yes. I see Courtney's, looks like she's ready to jump in. So I wanted to give Courtney a chance to get her questions in. Go ahead, Courtney. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Dave. Do you prefer David, or is Dave okay?
Dave, when I was doing resumes a few years back, I said, Dave, use Dave. David sounds too formal.
Okay.
More personal. It seems like, easier to reach. Dave is fine. Or if you're mad at me, whatever you spew out your mouth, I mean.
Okay. So I was really impressed of your family's good fortune in your, I believe, father-in-law's return to health.
Yeah, well, I don't, he's up there in his mid-80s right now. And he went through a traumatic experience with the coma and the life support and everything else. Yeah. And when my wife and I were married, we were sitting on the sofa, he and I, and he was, he had some weight, he had some density to him. Yeah. Now he's just a shell of what he was. And right. I don't think my father-in-law is going to be around much longer. And I'm going there for 2 weeks. I'm going to be doing an expose on healthcare in Thailand. Everybody wants to do, Europe. Well, I'm going to show what a poor nation in Southwest Asia is doing.
Excellent. So I think that story is very inspiring and really reinforces the need for single payer healthcare and the ability to choose to go that route. Where do you stand on people and the subject of end of life care in the not continuing support? Where do you stand on medical autonomy as to like the choice of the patient and or the family members responsible for their decisions?
I'm going to go back to one of the posters that I saw in the march the other day. My body, my choice. And I don't want my children sitting around my deathbed crying and moaning and everything, and I have no idea who's there. I don't want my family going through that. And so it's my body, it's my choice, just like the poster I saw at the Women's March the other day. And I believe that, now there are going to be people of faith and other regiments that are going to say, oh, no, leave it up to God. Well, it's a natural thing. You're dying. And if you want to go quietly, turn off the machines if you're on life support. I mean, that's what I've told my family. And that's in my request, do not resuscitate. Plain and simple. If I'm gone, I can't. Yeah, medical science is marvelous, and it could probably bring me back, like it has many others. But I don't think that I should have to linger and cause anguish and pain. I want my family to move on. I've given them a good foundation. I want them to move, take that, and move and build on it. And they can't do it if they're moaning and crying about me.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Mind you, that's my own personal thing. I'm not advocating anybody. I mean, if you want to do that yourself too, Rhonda, I applaud you for that. But it's a personal choice thing.
It is very much, and I can actually relate to it because my father actually asked me that same thing. He told me that same thing. If he ends up in the hospital like that, he doesn't want to come back in any sort of capacity that he's on life support. So he would want to go, and he pretty much put it in words that you said yourself. So thank you for that, and I respect that.
You're welcome, Brian.
Did we have any other questions? I can follow up with one more.
Yeah, well, Natalie Williams, she's the one that in the Facebook chat had asked about, the money in politics. And then when you were talking about, suing them all, she's like, how's that work when they own our government and so many judges are corrupted too? How do you see that actually working?
It could be difficult. It could be trying. But mind you, in 1978, I took on the United States government. I took on the Department of Defense. I took on the United States Navy, Marine Corps, North Carolina, and the county of Onslow. I did it without an attorney. And I know that the precepts and concepts of our laws are already written there. And if I have to, I'll write up the damn order myself. And I will send and make sure that we can get U.S. Marshals to seize them, to arrest them, and hold them for hearing. A hearing which they could get bailed out. But based on their experience, but we just have to force it out there. And I can tell you right now, there are U.S. courts, district courts, and prosecutors, as well as federal level, that are sharing the same views that I have shared just now. Don't worry, it's going to happen. We get in there and they start, and the fact that if I am elected to office in November. Okay, it's not if, I should say. When I'm elected to office in November, and I've been taking, contributions from my constituents, those people supporting me, and I'm going no corruption, no super PACs, none of that. And then when I get there, I take a bribe, because that's what it is, from a corporation to back down and do this. I have already violated my trust to you, but I'm still receiving that money that is allotted to me as your senator. That is misappropriation of funds already. That is embezzlement of federal money. That is also very much because of corporations' foreign influences that they hold within their body. It could be treasonous based on that. Anytime that you go against the will of the people and the people are not being served and you are being compensated by the people, that is, I'd be sending out a lot of Article 32s. Those are hearings, that is arrest warrants, that is, I'm holding you for trial. And
forgive my ignorance if there's already something out there. Forgive my ignorance, but do you know of any ways we could curb corruption in the courts, stop corporate money from flowing in the courts? I'm not aware of any way the legislative body could do that, but do you know of any ways?
The courts should fall under the Department of Justice, correct? And most of your judges are at the same time posted by, suggested by the president and voted on by the Senate. The same process that put them on that seat can also take them off that seat if there is corruption found.
Okay. Thank you.
That's great.
You're welcome.
So again, from Natalie. So a couple things here. So she says, wow, she's impressed, Dave. Good on you.
Thank you, Natalie.
So yes, she's been calling the usurpation of the government by big money and the Pauls to go along as treason for some time. So she's very impressed with how you're speaking, because it's going along the lines that she's.
Can I also add something to that for
yes.
Natalie and the panel here today? There are no limitations, no statute of limitations on crimes committed against the American people. Period.
That's
there
nice.
are no statute of limitations. So if you left office in 2016, or you left office in 2000, or you're still alive and serving in 78, and you committed crimes against the American people, you could be arrested.
Can I ask a controversial question, if you all don't mind?
Oh,
sure.
Please do.
Are you for prosecuting Bush and Cheney for war crimes that they did? Since you mentioned there's no statute of limitations on the crimes against the American people?
Let me answer that very simply. We sold weapons of mass destruction to Saddam Hussein to fight Iran, did we not? Okay. Yep. So we were saying that he had weapons of mass destruction. And everybody said, well, how there doesn't seem to be any evidence. Well, he probably used them all against Iran and his own people at that time. I mean, Hussein knew better than to use chemical weapons or WMDs against a coalition against him like that. He thought he could bash it out in a conventional type warfare. But we knew he had the WMDs. We sold them to him. Period. And then we go back and we do a regime change. Just because Daddy Bush got threatened by Saddam Hussein, how many nations have we threatened over our life, the life of this nation? And we're not being held accountable. We're not. Are those countries going to war with us? Are the first people getting to be able to reclaim the territory that was theirs from the beginning? No, it's not. So because of that, we need to be judicious in what we do. We need to make sure that those people who commit these crimes against humanity, and that's what it is. Yes, I think we can make it stick. We can make it stick.
Yep, and same goes for bankers that led to the crash.
Yes, and one thing about Halliburton, okay, all the government contracts that that he made, they made $5 million off of every dead American soldier. For every American life lost, Halliburton made $5 million.
Really?
Well, do the math. The number of those killed versus the profit of Halliburton.
I hadn't heard that number.
Well, I said, wait a minute, being a Marine, I wanted to know. If I'm going to say something, I wanted to know. And it may be overall, it didn't include cost and things like that, but they said profit. And so that profit, was also to their operating cost was much higher. The blood, our national treasure, spilt in Iran or Iraq.
And some could argue our only purpose over there is for natural resources, right? Which kind of leads me into some of the things that I believe is some of the most threatening events that has ever occurred in our planet's history. The dying of our oceans and the acidification of our ocean, along with the jet stream changing and the oceans rising. There's vast evidence of our planet literally in the midst of the sixth largest event or extinction event. What, in your view, can we do to curb this? What can America do to step up to the plate and be a leader in climate change action?
Remember when I mentioned about a $14+ trillion budget for 2019? That includes solar panels on every home, small business across this nation. It also includes a better infrastructure for Puerto Rico, meaning modern, up-to-date. Hurricane can come through and it's not going to knock them out. It may knock down a couple cell towers, but that's all it's going to do. But it's not going to knock out their power. It's not going to put lives at lost. And I can talk more about Puerto Rico some other time. But no, we can take the same stance that FDR took during World War II and mobilize. Instead of building guns and bullets, those kind of things, we build solar panels, the giant wind towers. But guess what? The grid starts with you, not some corporation or some solar farm that's out in the middle of the desert. The grid starts with you. The solar panels on your home or the small wind generator that has a 6-foot blade on it. Maybe that is what you're using to provide your power. So the grid starts with you and not some power company. A good friend of mine years back made it so that Tacoma Power had to pay us for those getting extra money back to the grid. They had to give us money back at the end of the year because we were suddenly we were an energy producer. And but no, that's what we can do with our public works program. Every home in 4 or 5 years. Tulsi Gabbard has a bill out there in 2035 or something, being 100%. We could do it in 5. We could mobilize our manufacturing base. It's going to take 6 months to gear up for it. But once it's geared, we wiped out fascism, imperialism. We wiped it out in less than 4 years. We could do it again. We could do it again.
What kind of oh, sorry. Go ahead, Brian. No? Oh,
I have a
go ahead,
question
Courtney.
that's slightly related to some of what he was saying.
Perfect.
Okay. So you live close, near or around Tacoma if you have Tacoma Power. And so that's a public utility. How do you feel about public utilities nationwide, which another way of calling it is socialized?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, so you see, I value Tacoma public utilities very much. And I'm wondering if this example motivates you at all.
Yes, I enjoyed Tacoma Power. I believe in 2015 they had a program where you could spend $100 and buy a solar panel. Do you remember that one, Courtney?
I do. Yes, I muted myself.
And my wife and I, we just bought this home, and so I didn't have the funds to invest in 2 or 3 because there was no limit as to what you could buy. Mm-hmm. And so when you think about winter and everything else, yeah. The only downside I have about Tacoma Power is, I pay for the same amount of water and I don't use all that water, and they're charging me for rain runoff. They're charging me for this, they're charging me for that. Part of the infrastructure tax thing going on. But Tacoma Power is a good example of a community, of a company, Public Works, reaching out to educate and bring those people in. I like that. And they're going to do it again, from what I understand, but it's going to probably be a year or more. Yeah. I like that kind of public works type thing.
Okay. I can understand. I live on a quarter acre, which is rare in an urban center.
Yes.
So, and most of our water stays on, water use stays on property. We're frugal with use, and then we, with the garden and everything, it's just our water stays on property. And so we have talked about what it would be like to, instead of being charged for, because what we're being charged for is less the water and more the disposable wastewater. Mm-hmm. And so if we could measure the water output of a house instead of the water input of a house, that would be a more fair pricing. And then are there any other programs that you would like to see become public/socialized?
Our entire power grid, because what's happening is we have gas and electric. Yeah. They're taking resources from the ground. Okay. Again, strategic resources. And in some cases, they're using fracking. I think that any fracking that has to be done, those people who want to do the fracking have to do this. They have to drink that fluid that they say you can drink. Mm-hmm. Before you can do any type of fracking, you have to show the people, and the people are going to hand you that fracking stuff. You drink it and you're okay. You don't go into convulsions and stuff on the floor. Then perhaps fracking is okay, but I don't think it is. And I don't like the fact that it affects our life. I mean, I'm against any type of drilling at all, because we don't need it. We have the technology now to move forward, and we need to move it straight ahead. Oil is a finite resource. Natural gas is a finite resource. And we need to, if we're going to get off this rock, we need to make sure that we have every element that we have currently at our disposal to be able to explore the universe.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, and I had this website I'm talking about that I divested myself from. Not all politicians or candidates do that. We know that our senators have, but it's environmental. And you get a chance. It's called Solar's Winds, and it's a link that's on my my homepage, David Strider. Check it out. If there's questions, you can leave comments. The device that I designed, my son is working on right now. He's going to finish it. So, I mean, check it out. And there's so much we can do. We can free ourselves from oil, plain and simple. PSE doesn't need to be doing this LNG plant. And the fact that it's a violation of tribal highways and stuff, and the fact of all those things to be considered, it needs to stop right now.
So I have a couple questions I wanted to hit on before we close this out. One thing that I always find really important that I try to ask all of the candidates is have you worked on locally within your area or even Washington State as far as in the community? Any nonprofits, any issue-based homelessness, you name it, any organizations working on changing the way things are today? Are you active or have been active in any of your local?
When my son was up here, I was very active in his education. In fact, I was asked to speak, be one of the speakers. He said, "Yeah, Daddy, there are going to be other people there too." Well, I come to find out that I was the speaker. And so because I was speaking at a small, I think it was K through 6, I tailored what I said to them. And so I gave them a little bit of history and things like that. And I tried to intertwine it like the Magic School Bus, that kind of thing, Schoolhouse Rock. And it was well received. I have letters that I did that I got from the principal about how they did. I'm a volunteer teacher in Thurston County. I haven't really been that active. I've been very vocal on the internet, and I help those people in my community that need help or ask for help. I help guide them. I work very closely with veterans things. But my first bit of activism started in 1970 when 4 students were killed at Kent State for peacefully protesting. I wasn't even 18 yet, and I knew that something was wrong. And then I joined the Marine Corps. And then I decided in 1978 that I was going to do something else. And I became a major activist. So I'm still doing it right now. In 1978, Marine Corps David L. Strider petitioned the North Carolina Drug Commission for therapeutic use of marijuana. I've had legal access, hassle-free access to marijuana for the last 40 years. People are going to say, "Well, David, why didn't you help us with our thing out here?" In 1978, as I mentioned, that I took on the government and all those other entities, I was by myself. And there was a whole state moving toward that. Yes, I was worldwide. UPI picked up the story. It was in Europe. It was in Japan. It was on newspapers. It was in everything else. The whole state. Had it gone sideways, I would have said something. But I didn't have to. I was watching the movement. Now today, we have Jeff Sessions trying to do that other same thing. So this is my point of activism, okay? Is to repeal marijuana off its current schedule. Now, everybody may not agree with that, but I want you to understand this. Marijuana was wrongfully placed on that because of racial things. It's the black man, he's doing this reefer, he's going to steal your white woman, and he's going, that was the concept that put it on Schedule 1. Okay? It's got to be repealed. And those who have suffered in it should also be considered for reparations. And that's not giving them a lump sum, but with a great budget, full job, a full job employment package, and healthcare. They're not going to worry about it. They're just going to need money for subsistence. They're also going, because of single payer healthcare, they're going to be able to get the counseling that they need to reestablish themselves in the community. Think about the families that have been broken and the generations that have been lost. I scheduled court martials. It said Marine Sergeant, okay? And I worked in the Piedmont Judicial Circuit. I was the senior clerk. I scheduled court martials. And I saw all this. I was up for staff sergeant in 1977. I was up for staff sergeant. I was up for officers candidate school to be considered to be a prosecutor for the Marine Corps. Non-certified trial counsel is what they call them. I would have gone to school during the year. And then on summer break, I would have come and done court martials. That means charging people and seeing that they got convicted on marijuana charges. I used it then. Excellent to outstanding. My fitness reports were outstanding. And so I felt that I had the position that I could go and I could put this out there and save some Marines down the road. And that is what's happened. How many? I don't know. But it has changed the way the UCMJ has conducted itself since 1978. There is therapy, there is counseling, there is programs for the active duty servicemen. I talked with one the other day who had office hours for 8 times on marijuana charges. So I think that that's where my activism starts. And the growers and the stores that are here in the Puget Sound, they need to be able to use the people that are working there don't need to be worried about DEA crashing through. People who use marijuana, and myself, you know, I've just opened myself up to it for a target for Jeff Sessions. You know, Schmiegel needs to go back, you know, and find Precious, because Precious ain't here in the United States. Okay. And I just think we need to change it. And if I am a target and if I do get arrested, cool.
I like that. Cool. So we're running out of time, but I do want to make sure. So again, from the audience is Natalie, you know, she wants to help you win. She's saying, hit her up. So for those of, you know, people who don't have the money necessarily, of course, we always, you know, everybody needs some donations to help out. But for those that, you know, struggle with the financial means, could you let us know how to get a hold of you to get involved in your campaign? We have some people wanting to volunteer their time to help you out. So as we're so as we're ending today's interview with you, please again introduce who you are, what you're running for, how to get a hold of you, and any last words you'd like to make sure everybody knows.
Good afternoon. My name is Dave Strider. I am an independent candidate for the office of U.S. Senator representing the people of Washington State. I have many different things on my platform, many different issues. I'm an independent because I did not want to be part of a party. I wanted to be able to take your voice to Washington, D.C. I wanted to be able to listen to your voice without the dogma of a party. I want you to be able to tell me if I'm wrong and not feel repercussions. I want you to speak up. This is your nation. This is your country. If you want more information and you want to help me volunteer for this campaign, please contact me at davestriderforussenate.com. There's a link to sign up to, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Oh, that's wonderful. And also, I'm sure on your website, there is a link to donate as well. So people that are not able to volunteer their time and are elsewhere, definitely encouraged to please contribute to his campaign.
Yes, I appreciate that.
Thank you again for taking your time out and meeting with us today. We really appreciate it. And we'll get this interview to you as well to help send that out through your contacts, and we'll do the same over here.
I'd like to say one thing about the panel and the people that you represent, your team that you've put together. I've been with you guys, following you now for over a year, and I have watched you grow to encompass so many different things, so many faces that are out there speaking the truth. I admire you for what you've done, what you do, and I feel it in myself. It was an honor to be able to come here, be questioned by your panel, and be able to speak my campaign to the people of Washington State. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dave. That was very nice.
Thank you, Dave. That means a lot, bud.
Okay, I'm going to end the live stream right now, but you can go ahead and stay on. Hold on just a minute.